Hi there, I'm currently on public transport and I thought I would provide some insightful social commentary on the big debate revolving around face masks or face coverings. To wear one or not to wear one? That is the question. Now, the regulations have somewhat set up people to unquestioningly comply, which is very interesting because we are technically in an enlightened part of the world, the Western Hemisphere. This isn't communist China. For instance, here in the UK, there was just a notice that the wearing of a face covering would be mandatory, effective on the 15th of June 2020. Now, it didn't explain why, and the only thing that's made people comply thus far is the abstract or idle threat of a fine. So of course, if you're a normal 3D person, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to be fined. And so you're going to react. But it's as though you've missed a meeting. Nobody told you that A, you have free will, and B, that you have human rights. People who are vehemently against mask wearing in the United States are using the asthma card, but that's not necessary. It hasn't taken into account anyone who perhaps may have PTSD, complex PTSD. They could have been a victim of satanic ritual abuse or Masonic ritual abuse, and wearing a face mask could easily trigger them into a panic attack or a psychotic breakdown. Or maybe you've been raped with the mask on. You know, it's not taking into account vulnerable people with traumatic pasts. Now, if you're awake and aware as to what this is really about, you would be authentic and you would stand up and say, no, I do not consent to Satanism, I do not consent to tyranny. This is all about compliance and consent and da-da-da-da-da. This is not about a virus or a pandemic. Wearing a mask doesn't make me safe or make you safe. And frankly, it's just simply exhausting trying to play this infantile game of let's pretend there's a virus and let's pretend that I am keeping you safe by doing this. It's just Marxist virtue signaling. That's all it is. And it's pathetic and quite childish, actually. And it's a complete myth that you might make someone feel safe if you wear a mask. If they are wearing a mask, they don't need to feel safe from you if you wear a mask or don't wear a mask, because they're wearing a mask. So why should they care whether you wear a mask? It makes no sense. Now, I must warn you, if you choose not to wear a mask on public transport, I must warn you, the social pressure is practically impaling. It is enormous, beastly, and demonic. So if you're not comfortable with feeling like everyone is like looking at you and judging you, then maybe just you might want to wear it, because it's exhausting trying to stand up to this incredibly dark, dense, demonic energy. And if you're highly sensitive, you might want to make a statement, which is a sort of a middle way statement. So neither wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, but actually, so not doing this, but doing this. It's a middle way because you're not covering this and you can still breathe. And it's a sort of a Zen statement, which is basically, I'm neither wearing nor not wearing a mask. I'm making a statement. And if anyone says something, oh, well, you need to put it over higher, then they're simply not minding their own business and respecting your own boundary. And if anyone gets aggressive, just say, hey man, social distancing. Use the bullshit tactics against them, Today I had some trained person walk up to me and say, oh, do you have a face covering? And I just looked at her like, and she walked off. So, these people don't have power. What they do have is the illusion of power. Another thing is that we're all, to some extent, tribal animals. So not consenting to wear a mask in the midst of everyone who is tantamount to social suicide. And you gotta consider, is it worth it? Do you want your freedom and human rights at the price of shame, ridicule, isolation? Or is that too high a price to pay? It's up to you. Now, for people like Jesus Christ, he didn't care, about persecution. He was just like, if he was here today, he'd be like, yeah, okay, great, find me, crucify me. I'm not wearing a mask. I only answer to God, no satanic government, so do what you will. And of course, we have the choice to follow his example. But don't beat yourself up if you're not quite at that level yet, at that level of consciousness. But we all know that the compulsory mask wearing is a sort of ritual humiliation coming from whoever's mandated this. But also, if you want to use a card that's not the asthma card, just say, if you're asked, just say, look, I have CPTSD or PTSD. Wearing one gives me immense anxiety, and I might have a panic attack, and I don't want to make a scene. So, there are people who have traumatic flashbacks. This when you see someone wearing a mask, it's tantamount to psychic rape. It's traumatizing seeing someone wearing a mask, especially when there's this pandemic which isn't even real. It'd be one thing if the virus was real, but the point is, it's been all orchestrated. So you can't help but feel that something more sinister is going on, and you can bury your head in the sand all you want, but do your research. The information is all out there anyway. So to use a Lord of the Rings analogy, not wearing a mask will ironically draw a lot of attention to you. So it's like putting on the ring and then having the eye of Sauron on you. So do you really want that attention? You got to assess whether you're comfortable with that or not. It's like you're in Mordor and you're trying to get the ring to the volcano, and so do you go incognito as an orc through Mordor, or do you skip through Mordor as you are, like a hobbit? But obviously that's going to draw the most attention. So you got to assess whether to go incognito like this or not. Do you want the attention from the eye, so to speak? Sense that if you choose not to wear one, there's a lot of unworkably aggressive energy that's sort of coming your way. Not so much from the authority figures, but actually, surprisingly, from the sheeple. And you gotta assess whether you're comfortable with that. And even though you're an adult with free will and personal choices at hand, you're going to be made to feel like a defiant, rebel, teenage anarchist, which really sucks because, you're an individual with choices, and it's like society is set up to make the individual look like some defiant anarchist simply by exercising his free will and human rights, which is completely bizarre and wrong. And even anarchy has been misdefined. Anarchy is simply self-rule. You don't need a government to tell you what to do, because you're a mature, responsible adult who can make common sense decisions about his own behavior and well-being, you know? So of course it has nothing to do with this made-up virus or pandemic. It has more to do with manufactured consent and just seeing who's a sheep and who's not, really. It also has a lot to do with boundaries and keeping your own boundaries as well as an individual. So what's happening is a lot of attempted boundary violation, and a true functional human being is one who respects another human being and minds his or her own business. If you're a pussy infantile mask wearer, then simply respect the other guy who's not wearing a mask and mind your own fucking business. Likewise, if you choose not to wear a mask, respect the sheeple who are wearing masks and mind your own business. Their choice. In Taoism, the rule is simple. Don't hinder or harm anyone, and respect each other and mind your own business. That's it. It's so simple. It's not rocket science. So there we are. Interesting times we're living in, and yeah, till next time.